This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
All right, this episode of Real Talk dedicated to those of you that are road tripping right now. 'Tis the season as we head into August long weekends. Of course, we're grateful every single time you give us your valuable time. But for those of you that have downloaded this podcast, you're going to be streaming it somewhere across the country on your way to somewhere special. Maybe it's a place your family's gone for 40 or 50 years. Maybe you're about to check out a brand new destination, at least to you. You have picked the perfect episode, because in just a quick second, we're going to introduce you to the man behind literally my favorite follow on X, on Twitter. This guy, I've been following him for years, and I absolutely love what he does. He's a teller of Canadian stories, but his interpretation of and presentation of Canadian history is done like nobody else really does it. He makes it accessible. He makes it interesting, and a beautiful storytelling mission. He's on, Craig Baird, with a brand new book, Canada's Main Street, the epic story of the Trans-Canada Highway. Are you listening to this right now? Somewhere between Victoria and St. John's on that epic highway. Well, how fantastic is that? To learn a little bit about that pavement you're traveling on. Someone's going to write in, Craig, in a second and say asphalt. The asphalt that you're traveling on. So this one's dedicated to you. A little bit further into the episode, we're going to give you some fantastic August-long ideas if you're headed out to Jasper National Park, part of MyJasper Memories, and Shauna Feth, President and CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. She was in work mode last night moderating the Camrose Candidates Forum. Camrose, of course, part of that Battle River Crowfoot riding where like 210, as of the time we're recording this, 210 candidates have registered in this by-election. Tomfoolery. We talked about that before, the longest ballot committee. This might as well be known. It's completely unfair to present it this way, but you might as well call it the Pierre Poilievre by-election, because that's the storyline here. But if you've been watching Real Talk over the past few weeks, you might refer to it as the Bonnie Critchley by-election or something else along those lines. Point is, about 10 candidates up on stage. Shauna was moderating this right after her attendance and participation at the PNWER, that national convention. The president and CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce will give us her firsthand report. Plus, of course, the Bank of Canada lending rates. That's another story today that we'll get into. What does that mean for business? What does it mean for entrepreneurs? What does it mean for you? But let's get to our feature interview this morning, presented by our friends at Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Craig Baird is the creator of Canadian History X. It's a podcast and a social media platform. You may catch it on X. You may catch it on Facebook, on Threads. You probably see it on Blue Sky, on Instagram. You name it. That's where Craig is sharing Canadian history literally on a daily basis. His podcast is one of the top Canadian history podcasts in the world, averaging well over 1 million annual downloads. And this year, just a short time ago, he released his very first book through Sutherland Press. It's called Canada's Main Street, the epic story of the Trans-Canada Highway. What a pleasure, Craig, to greet you in person in the historic Mercer Warehouse in downtown Edmonton, no less. Welcome to Real Talk.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And it's awesome to have you here. It's like I said, I've been following you for a long time. I love the way that you paint pictures. I love the way that you tell stories. Your passion for Canadian history. I no offense. I know I don't want any historian or any history lover to take offense to this, but sometimes in high school, you get into university, history is the class that some people have a hard time connecting with. Obviously not you.
No, I loved social studies. I loved, even in high school when we were learning history, we really focused on things like the Cold War, the Northwest Resistance, things like that. And we didn't really focus on a lot of Canadian history, but I still found I really loved history in general. And it took a little while before I started to explore Canadian history and really started to get into it.
Oh, very cool. So I've seen a lot of coverage, not coverage, but writing and storytelling around the railway in Canada and what went into that. Obviously the highs and the lows. But there hasn't been a lot of talk. There hasn't been a lot of storytelling around the Trans-Canada Highway. Why did you take this on?
Well, a big influence for me with my journey in Canadian history was Pierre Burton, and not his first books, but two of his most popular books are about the CPR, the National Dream and then the Last Spike. And I started thinking about the fact that we have all of this history around the CPR, like you said, but not really a lot around the Trans-Canada Highway, even though we all use the Trans-Canada Highway, and it's had a huge impact on our culture and our history, but it just gets overshadowed. It's kind of just there, and we don't really think about the fact that this took longer to build, it cost more, and it took more cooperation in order to accomplish.
So about 75 years ago, you've got thousands of Canadians that have recently returned from serving their country, risking their lives, many, of course, giving their lives in the Second World War. You're seeing a housing boom. You're seeing a lot of, post-war babies. The boomers are being born. But Canadians, I guess, from BC all the way through to Newfoundland are what? They're traveling secondary highways. They're traveling gravel roads. How are people getting around prior to Parliament making a decision in 1949?
Well, a lot of people aren't driving across Canada because it's just not possible. Driving over Lake Superior, you were driving essentially through wilderness. You were driving through very difficult terrain. And they said that if you're going to drive a long distance in Canada, make sure you have a lot of spare tires and all this stuff, because the roads weren't great. You'd be hitting boulders and big potholes. There was no real overarching regulations on how the road should be. So a lot of Canadians, especially if they want to drive coast to coast, would leave, say, Halifax and go through Maine and then come up into Quebec and then go through Quebec into Ontario. But then rather than go over Lake Superior, they would just go back into the United States and then come up in around Winnipeg or Manitoba, go through the prairies, then go back in the United States, bypass all that, and then come up into Vancouver. So there was not a lot of people actually going clear across the country, rather than they would just go into the United States.
Okay, but for a country that wants to see its economy boom, for a country that wants to bring people together, and of course celebrate, I think nationalism can have positive and negative connotations. But if you're a proud Canadian and you want to travel across your country, circa 1950, having to dip into the United States every day or two is hardly getting your head where you want your head to be at.
Absolutely, and the government really looked at that and was, thinking about all the tourism dollars they were losing because people are going to the United States, and they really needed to have a road to go clear across the country because you also had trade going over the United States and then coming back into Canada. So you needed something that went from Victoria to St. John's that Canadians could travel, but also commerce could travel with trucking and everything, because the automobile was really starting to take over and bypass the railroad, which was on its way out by that point.
So is this something that the average Canadian cared about at that time? Was this on people's radar? Were elected officials being lobbied for this? Was the federal government feeling pressure?
There was a little bit of pressure, especially after the Second World War, because you did have a lot of people who had more disposable income. You had people who were buying cars for the first time. They wanted to see the country, and the federal government was very on board with that. And all the parties really agreed that we needed to have a national road going across the country. The only thing they disagreed on was who was going to pay for it. Some wanted the federal government to pay for the whole thing. Others wanted 50-50. Some wanted the provinces to pay for the whole thing, because the highways are essentially a provincial issue. And so that was a real thing that the government was jockeying with, was how we're going to pay for it and who's going to pay for it.
How did they sort that out?
Well, with the Trans-Canada Highway Act in 1949, they agreed to be 50-50. So the federal government would pay 50 and then the provinces would pay 50. But the thing was that the provinces had to choose the route. And I mean, I look at today and I can't imagine provinces agreeing on where the route's going to go.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, like in places like Nova Scotia and PEI, it's very easy to choose where your road's going to go. But as you start to go west, especially Saskatchewan and Alberta, you start to have more options. I mean, Alberta had 3 options: Edmonton, Lethbridge, and Calgary for this road to go through. And then BC has to make sure that its road lines up with Alberta, and Alberta with Saskatchewan, Saskatchewan with Manitoba. So they all had to kind of agree on this. And all these cities are fighting for this. And then you have a federal election happening at the same time. So all the candidates are saying, oh no, we'll get the road through Edmonton, but then down south they're saying we'll get the road through Calgary, and everybody's promising something, even though they know that it's most likely going to go through the south because of trade and things like that.
Because of trade, because it's a big deal, right? I mean, the main thoroughfare through Edmonton, obviously the Yellowhead Highway, which does its fair share of connecting, with that route through to Jasper and obviously coming through right around Kamloops-ish. Pardon my ignorance, did the Yellowhead exist when they were building the Trans-Canada Highway?
It did, but it wasn't really a great highway. Like driving out to a place like Jasper, it was a more or less dirt road. And there's, in my book, I mentioned the caravan that Edmonton took from Edmonton to Jasper and then on down to, I believe it was Kamloops or Kelowna, just to prove that there's a road here and we can use this as the Trans-Canada Highway. But it was a rough road. It was dirt. It was, it was like a back road that we would have today. So you did have a road, but it wasn't a great road.
I wonder if it was it in a way a political concession to Calgary? I mean, I know it probably makes economic sense to keep that Trans-Canada Highway as close to the U.S. border and as linear as possible. But Calgary is long. I'm a born and raised Calgary kid. Calgary has long felt slighted by the fact that Edmonton was named the provincial capital. Calgary has always deep down inside felt that it should be the capital of the province.
Yeah, somebody born in Calgary as well. I definitely can agree with that.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, they got the university, they got the capital.
Yep.
And with the building of the Trans-Canada Highway, one thing the government agreed to do was they would pay 100% of the cost in national parks. So Banff was already starting to become a very popular national park, far more than Jasper, and that plays into it as well because you want those Americans coming up into Canada, getting right on that highway and going right into Banff, and then all of the national parks that are over the border in BC.
So Louis St. Laurent is the prime minister at the time?
He is, yeah.
So he gets to take credit for this, I guess, or at least approving it. So it's approved by an act of parliament, is that right, in 1949?
Yeah.
And then what happens? They start building over the course of more than a decade. I mean,
Yeah.
It's a huge project.
It is. It was supposed to finish about 1956, and Saskatchewan was the only province to actually meet that deadline. I mean, in Saskatchewan,
Shout out Saskatchewan.
yeah,
There
Saskatchewan's
you go.
very easy to build across. So, but a lot of provinces didn't even decide their route for a little while. I think it took Nova Scotia until about 1952 before they finally decided this was the route they were going to take. Quebec didn't even sign on to this agreement until Maurice Duplessis died in 1959, and then the Quiet Revolution started in Quebec, and then they signed on to the agreement. So they didn't even sign on until 1960. So you did start with...
Really?
Yeah. So
That's like right before it opened.
yeah, and even then, you know, when I say that it opened, it's like it opened because it was still being constructed. There was a highway that went across the country, but there were still portions that had to be worked on. There were still portions that were gravel. I mean, Newfoundland didn't finish its part of the highway till 1965, and Diefenbaker opened the highway in 1962. So it's kind of a misconception that, like, oh, the highway was ready to go. It's like, no, there was still a lot of work to be done. Montreal had a ton of work that was being done because of Expo 67,
Right.
and they were getting money from the federal government. So when they decided that it was 1956 was the deadline, and then they knew that wasn't going to happen, they had to renegotiate. And what the federal government decided was, rather than pay 50-50, we will pay 90% of the cost for the 10% most difficult portions of the highway in your province.
I love this in our Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power. Darren says it's amazing how relatively recently we're talking about having no Trans-Canada Highway. Among others, he says it's always jarring to realize how young this country and province are. I think he hits the nail on the head there.
Absolutely. I mean, even when you look at driving across the country, the first technical people to drive across the country happened in 1912. But even then, they had to load the vehicle onto a barge to get over Lake Superior. They had to put it onto a train at one point. So it wasn't technically driving across the country. And it didn't actually happen that somebody drove coast to coast on a road clear across Canada without going to the United States until about 1946. So it took quite a while before we actually had somebody make that attempt.
Oh, I love this comment from Jillian. She says, I love this country so much. See, this is what you bring out in people, Craig. This is what you bring out in me every time I see your account. I'm not even joking. She says, the saying, God made the greatest playground on earth and called it Canada, describes our amazing country perfectly. Back to the highway in just a second. What drives your work? Like you don't have like a PhD in history or anything like that, but your eyes, I mean, for our podcast listeners, you've been smiling this whole time. You love talking about this stuff.
I do. I love Canadian history. No, I don't have a degree in it. I have a degree in computer science, and then I became a journalist for about a decade and a half, a newspaper journalist. But I've always loved history, and in the 90s, I was really into European history and ancient history, and I didn't think Canadian history was that interesting. And then I started to see things like the Heritage Minutes, reading the books of Pierre Burton, and it kind of showed me that Canadians are interested in their history. It's all in how it's being presented to them. And when you only present something like, say, Confederation, it's great when we became a country. The process to become a country was very boring. We were just having conferences. But then when you look at the events leading up to that, like the Upper and Lower Canada rebellions, or in 1849 when Canadians burned down their parliament buildings because they were rioting and mad. Like, there's all these other things that you could talk about leading up to stuff like that. And I just kind of saw that Canadians do want to see their history. It's just you got to make it interesting for them. And you can talk about things like I do. Like on Sunday, I talked about the polka dot door. That's part of our history. That's nostalgia.
Sure is.
Like,
as soon as you said that, this is wild. My brain starts going, the polka dot door, the polka dot door. So even the moments like the history that worked on you. That's effective. Can I call it marketing? It is marketing, really.
It is, yeah. It's TikTok before there was TikTok. You had these 1-minute videos that presented the history very quickly, but very interesting, and it made you want to learn more about it.
Yeah. Circling back, it's wild to me. So the federal government obviously has huge involvement on this, creates the impetus, provides a significant share of the funding, but still there was provincial autonomy on routes. I don't know if, like you alluded to already, I don't know if you could even pull that off. I don't know if you could get everybody on the same page. Was it like the post-war? Was there kind of like a what am I looking for? Political synergy, ideological synergy? Was Canada? I mean, in so many ways, of course, it was different. But how would you describe the difference of the general Canadian mentality at that time? You mentioned Expo 67 looming. That's obviously huge. This young nation with a I don't want to say meager, let's say a modest population, relatively speaking, is getting set to welcome the world. It's getting set to celebrate its centennial. I mean, there's big things happening in Canada at this time.
Absolutely, and there did seem to be more national unity in that way. Now, obviously, you did have things like Quebec was starting to move towards being more nationalistic as well, and the FLQ eventually emerging. But in the 1940s and in the 1950s, there did seem to be more of a bit of unity in that way, and that allowed the provinces to work together more. Now, that doesn't mean a place like Edmonton didn't fight tooth and nail to try and get the Trans-Canada Highway, but ultimately unsuccessful.
Okay, so I'm getting corrected by a few people here, by the way. M8 writes in on the live chat, says, history was and is my favorite subject. She says, I loved learning Canadian history, Russian history as well, she says. By the way, Jill says that she's thrilled for history class right here on Real Talk this morning, and in honor of her junior high students, she didn't even bring a pencil, which is great. Tony says, Canada is so big. I would love to drive across this great land, she says, but I feel like I'd need like 2 months to be fully engulfed. She says, that's why I'm looking forward to retiring. I got all the time in the world. Do we have any idea, like in the context of like a ribbon cutting or something like that? Everybody always wants to be the first to drive across a new bridge or the first to drive across a new route. I mean, I'm sure that many families have heard stories around the dinner table of how Grandpa and Grandma were unofficially the first to travel the Trans-Canada Highway, but was there pomp and circumstance? What was the opening like?
The opening, it's kind of funny, there was 2 openings. So there was the opening that most people know about with John Diefenbaker tamping down a bit of asphalt and declaring that it's open in the Rogers Pass. But there was another opening that happened about 2 months earlier because BC was angry at the federal government over some of the cost sharing and things like that. So they held their own opening of the Trans-Canada Highway about 2 months earlier, and it happened just nearby. So you still kind of had that province versus federal government, but the official opening was in September of 1962 with Diefenbaker.
And was there immediate uptick? Like, is this something that rallied Canadians? I mean, what do we know about what it did for? I mean, you mentioned tourism earlier, and that's obviously huge. Was it immediately a boon to operators and to the industry, generally speaking?
You started to get more people starting to travel and starting to explore the country, and then you also start to get things like roadside attractions popping up. They weren't really a thing before they were a thing in the United States, but not really in Canada. And so the real first one that pops up is in Wawa with the big giant goose that they have in Wawa. And they built that very soon after the highway was built through the area, because most of the times the Trans-Canada Highway was built to the north or south of a community, not really through a community. So you would build a roadside attraction to draw people into your community, and that's exactly what Wawa did with theirs. But you did start to see more and more people starting to drive. But again, it wasn't like that Trans-Canada Highway we think of now where it's 2 lanes and we can, very easily drive across the country. It was still, in some parts, gravel. In some parts, it was rough, especially over Lake Superior. And you did hit potholes, and, there were detours and things like that, and some construction still going on.
We're showing a photo right now on YouTube of the giant goose in Wawa. So, I mean, I can rattle off. I mean, there's like the giant sausage in Mundare. There's giants everywhere across Canada. Is Wawa, they probably are underappreciated for this. I've not heard it referenced. Do they officially have bragging rights for being the first to roll out the biggest fill in the blank in Canada?
I don't know if they have the first, thing in Canada, like the biggest thing in Canada, but I definitely think that they had the first that was specifically built for the Trans-Canada Highway to draw people in without it, because it was only a short period after. And the picture he put up is kind of the new version of it. There was a previous version of it that actually sits in like their downtown now, which is a bit smaller, but that's the new one that's even bigger than, draw more people in.
Because somebody else probably built a bigger
exactly.
too. That's exactly the way it went.
100%.
I remember when they were talking to the Calgary Tower when it started getting surpassed in downtown. They're like, we just need to make the antenna taller. I think they did the same thing with, this could be a new idea, not to tell you what to do, because you've obviously done a great job with your accounts. People can follow you, of course. I'll let people know on X, on Twitter, at Craig Baird, and they can also follow you on Instagram at CDN History X. I like how you spelled it, EHX. Very nicely done. Couldn't that be a feature maybe of like the world's biggest whatevers in Canada? We could do like the top 10 or something like that.
I actually did
pierogi? Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did it took about 4 or 5 months of polling to find out what was Canada's favorite roadside attraction.
And what are they?
The number one was the Terry Fox Memorial outside Thunder Bay. Anything with Terry Fox in the polls that I do always wins. It's a guarantee. But like in Alberta, the most popular one was the Pasanka in Vegreville.
Yes, absolutely. It's stunningly beautiful. Shout out to our friends in Vegreville. Okay, so hang on a second. We obviously can't talk about, let's just hard swerve here and go there. You can't talk about the Trans-Canada Highway without talking about Terry Fox.
And that's what I try and explain to people when we look at the Trans-Canada Highway. It very much is part of our culture because, like you said, Terry Fox ran on the Trans-Canada Highway. Rick Hansen was on the Trans-Canada Highway with his Man in Motion tour. So we do have these things that are part of our history. The Tragically Hip, another roadside attraction tour, they are on the Trans-Canada Highway. And I think people, they just see the Trans-Canada Highway as something that is just, it's always there. I mean, in Calgary, if you want to go to Peters Drive-In, you drive on 16th Avenue, that's the Trans-Canada Highway. But you don't really think about it, or the fact that you can just get on that road and I can drive all the way to Halifax and never leave that road if I don't want to. Yeah,
like I said earlier, one of the reasons why I think it's so many people connect with your content and your storytelling. I mean, what is it like? You average like 1.25 million downloads annually. I wish people could see listening on the pod how that just made you smile. Does that blow your mind, by the way?
It does, because when I first started the podcast in 2019, it was like just me sitting at my kitchen table figuring out what I'm doing and just trying to talk about things that interested me. And now to be able to, this is my full-time job now of sharing history. Yeah, this is what I do. Every single day I used to get up at 6 and work until 6 and just keep sharing history and keep, putting it out there for people to learn more about our amazing history.
Yeah, so you get all the numbers covered and you get all the historical data and facts covered, but also you have a wonderful way of connecting it with people. Was there something in doing your research around this, in putting this book together? If you're just joining us in our Real Talk feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, this is Craig Baird, his brand new book, Canada's Main Street, The Epic Story of the Trans-Canada Highway. Was there a story that you'd never heard before? Was there something that you found just fascinating that kind of blew your mind?
Actually, it was, and it's related to where I grew up, just outside Edmonton, with the fact of how Edmonton fought to get the Trans-Canada Highway so badly. They had people going to Ottawa to try and get the highway. They had caravans, like I mentioned, going to Jasper to say, look, we got a highway, we can use this highway. And even after Ernest Manning said the highway's going to go through Calgary, which everybody knew was a foregone conclusion. I mean, that's where the CPR was going. You had Banff. It was close to the border. It was a larger city than Edmonton. And even after it was decided, Edmonton still fought to get the Trans-Canada Highway. And, I admire their gumption to think that they could get it. But at the same time, it's eventually going to end in Vancouver or Victoria. And everybody knows that. So it didn't make much sense for the highway to hit Regina and then go all the way north and then come back down and then go into Vancouver. But I really admired how they fought for it and how they had these caravans, and they had a whole committee that the city sponsored that funded to try and get the highway built. And ultimately we do have the Yellowhead, which technically is considered part of the Trans-Canada Highway network, but obviously isn't the Trans-Canada Highway itself.
Yeah, I remember my grandpa, my great uncle, talking about they were very proud to have worked on crews that built the Alaska Highway. That would have been prior to this, right? Or like right around the same time. But if you look at like just the way governments operate, the way that budgets work, I mean, even workforce, like employment opportunities, what have you, skilled labor. Did the two of those kind of the priorities conflict with each other? Was there any overlap there?
Not too much overlap because the Alaska Highway was built in about 1942, but that did play a part in getting the Trans-Canada Highway built because we saw that we could build a highway essentially through wilderness, and they did it in 9 months. And obviously they had an entire army of people building this, and it wasn't a great road. I mean, it was army vehicles that could essentially take it, but it showed us that we could actually build something through tough terrain, through Newfoundland, through the Canadian Shield, through BC, and get something built. So it definitely did help to kind of show that we can get a Trans-Canada Highway built.
You alluded to how difficult it might be to get something built across the country. I've seen senior federal politicians, typically in positions of opposition, lament that it would be impossible to build a railroad or to build a highway across the entire country right now. We have a difficult enough time getting pipelines greenlit through different regions, and a big part of that is because there's an increased awareness, and the country is more aware of the significance of indigenous communities, of sacred lands, of environmental protection. I mean, a whole bunch of different things that this audience is obviously very familiar with. Were those considerations front of mind, or did they factor in when this planning was happening back in the 1950s?
Not really. It was like, let's just build and blast through rock. And even there was a indigenous village. It was a small little settlement, and it was felt that it was unsightly next to the Trans-Canada Highway. So they actually did even move those indigenous people away from their land because they didn't want tourists driving by and seeing what they felt was an unsightly part of the country. So it was not a consideration at all. It was built where it was going to be built, and it didn't matter if it was a habitat for, a rare species. The bulldozers were coming through.
I wanted to ask you about wildlife after that, because I think anybody that's driven, and I'm sure it's not unique to Alberta. It can't be unique to Alberta. But if you're on your way from Calgary to Banff, you're going to see these wildlife corridors. They're actually pretty cool. For people that haven't seen them, imagine a bridge that goes over, but the bridge has been presented to look like natural with native grasses and trees. It's really kind of neat. Somebody with Parks Canada told me once. I said, I was kind of quipping like some smartass that knows nothing about what he's talking about, which I'm really good at. I said, these animals, like, how do you train animals to use bridges? How do you train? And they said, no, like, actually, they really do use them. You can see these cams, these motion cameras and there's regular animal traffic across. Was there thinking at that time? I mean, I know a lot of these have been built within the last 20, 30 years. Was there thinking at that time or awareness around things like wildlife? I mean, you hit a moose going 100 somewhere in Manitoba, could be lights out for everybody.
Yeah, they didn't really think too much about that. And I mean, we have to remember there wasn't a lot of cars that were on the road at that point. It was a slow progress where we started to get more and more cars starting to appear. But yeah, it was the highways going there and the cars are coming through, and the animals just better watch where they're going.
Yeah. Did your like, as you've traveled the Trans-Canada, I mean, you've been you're basically like midway through a book tour as we speak, aren't you? You've been traveling across the country, talking to people about your book. Has it completely changed? Like every time you kind of merge onto the Trans-Canada, onto the number one, do you get a little bit of a smile, or it's obviously has to have deepened your not just your awareness, but maybe your appreciation for it?
Absolutely, because now when I drive on the Trans-Canada Highway, I do think about all the people who did build that and all the work that went into making that happen, and how it caused some communities to boom and it caused some communities to disappear essentially because of where it went. And so you do start to think about that, and you think about, you're driving on that road and you're looking at the horizon, and it's like, I can just keep driving on that until I hit the Atlantic Ocean. Yeah,
so cool. By the way, Catherine O'Neill, she's the CEO of the YWCA Edmonton. She's listening right now. She says, I'm such a fan of Craig Baird. She says he's an Alberta legend, keeping our national and provincial stories alive and kicking. Which is a huge compliment, I think, from her, former Globe and Mail journalist. Is that part of what drives your advocacy? You want to make sure, like, not just the current generations, but the next generation has an appreciation of this country, where it was, where it is, and where it's going?
Yeah, I want people to kind of see the amazing parts of their history and see that Canada has a very deep and fascinating history. We tend to think of Canada as like, we only have a history going back to 1867, but last week I was standing at petroglyphs in southern Saskatchewan that are almost 2,000 years old, and the history is there. And it's just, I just want to share it with people and get people interested, whether I'm talking about deep Indigenous history or Mr. Dress Up or whatever it might be.
Yeah. In your estimation, the greatest Canadian television production of all time is?
I would say Mr. Dress Up with Nostalgia, but I mean, I love SCTV. It was just so revolutionary.
Well, we should let people know. Look at this. You just posted a photo this morning.
right.
I got to show everybody. I love this. So this is you live relatively close to Edmonton, but not in Edmonton, correct?
I do.
But as the smart man you are, you wanted to avoid the traffic on your way into our studio downtown this morning. So you took some time to stop by this classic installation of Bob and Doug McKenzie, that statue.
Oh yeah,
How did you feel as you sat on the bench with these two beauties?
I just thought it was amazing that Canada has statues for two guys who are on SCTV, two hosers, fictional characters, and we have statues to celebrate them, and that's what I love about Canada.
Oh, it's the absolute best. Craig, it's a real pleasure to have you here, and I know that like our road tripping audience, as well as those that are watching us on live chat right now, this is business as usual for them. Are going to have when I was checking out your work for the very first time, I thought this is like the exact sort of thing that I've been looking for to better understand the country, the significance of the stories. You're doing an incredible job with it. I want to encourage our audience to make sure to subscribe to your podcast. They can find it wherever you get podcasts, right? Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it. Mm-hmm. Okay, and also check out Canada EHX. That's Canada X. .com. We'll put that in the show notes. Craig Baird, it's funny, we'll take people behind the curtain here. You said, you got to tell people, you said, I don't have a PhD or anything like that. You said, I'm an amateur historian. I said, no, you created it. You carved this out for yourself. This is your living. But a Canadian historian, a master storyteller, and author of Canada's Main Street, the epic story of the Trans-Canada Highway. Thanks for hanging out with us, man. I really appreciate it. Mm-hmm. We're about to talk to the audience about Jasper. And obviously it's been a big week for Jasper, kind of the 1 year mark of that wildfire and the like. People talking about the rebuild, people talking about its bright future, not ignoring the reality of the challenges right now. Do you have a favorite when it comes to like the history of Jasper in particular, or Jasper National Park? Do you have a favorite story that you look to?
One story I love is when Marilyn Monroe was in Jasper, and apparently she got kicked out of the Jasper Park Lodge because they didn't like how she was dressed, which it wasn't like she was dressed in a wild way. It was just, right. But she got kicked out of there and ended up staying with some other people. But that's one story that I really love that not many people know.
Yeah, pretty interesting, isn't it? Boy, how things have changed, yeah. Right? I don't know who today's Marilyn Monroe is. Johnny Hicks is, of course, the intrepid technical producer of the show, but also our pop culture expert. Who is today's Marilyn Monroe? Who would you say is today's Marilyn Monroe?
I don't know. You're putting me on the spot.
I am putting you on the spot because I want to take the heat away from myself. But I'm trying to think of someone who is like an icon of film, of pop culture. Somebody like, I think this is the easiest because, she presented herself like her years later, but like Madonna was certainly there for a few years. Maybe Lady Gaga.
You could say somebody like Margot Robbie or something like that.
Margot Robbie.
Yeah.
I don't think any of them would be kicked out of the JPL for any
Probably
reason right
not,
now.
no.
I don't think so. It's great to see you, my man. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
doing this. Have a wonderful rest of your summer, and congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
That's Craig Baird. As mentioned, once a week, it's our privilege to be able to take some time out of the news cycle and talk to you about the memories that lie in wait, the marvel that is Jasper National Park. It's MyJasper Memories, proudly presented by our friends at Tourism Jasper. And for those of you that are road tripping, maybe you're on Highway 16, you're on your way out there right now, this episode or this edition of MyJasper Memories is dedicated to you. I just wanted to remind you, especially even if you don't have plans, maybe some of you have been had your reservations in place and you've been looking forward to this for weeks or even months. But if you don't have a plan for August long weekend, it's upon us, my friends, in the next couple of days, and there's never been a better time to go check out the cabin capital of Canada. Some of the finest restaurants in the province of Alberta and in Western Canada, for that matter, and of course the natural beauty. We're giving you a shot right there of Spirit Island on Moline Lake, which is an absolutely breathtaking spot to visit. Jasper, of course, has had a connection with people for decades and decades. And it's also one of Canada's tourism crown jewels, which means that it welcomes new visitors for the very first time from well over 100 countries. And it's obvious every time you're there when there's somebody that's there for the first time, because you can see them sitting there on Patricia Street or wherever they are, just looking around with their jaw on the floor, taking it all in. Of course, as mentioned, a difficult anniversary for Jasper just a few days ago, and we commemorated it. We marked it with a special episode of Real Talk. I want to direct your attention to that. That was the July 24th episode. You can see I had a chance to speak with Jasper's Mayor, Richard Ireland, as part of that. Eleanor Olszewski, the federal minister for emergency management and community resilience, took the time to talk to us, as did journalist Bob Covey. We spoke to Tyler Riopel, the CEO of Tourism Jasper, Talon Sweeney, the director of golf operations at the Fairmont JPL, and then, of course, as well, we had Lisa Dara, Mikey Day joined us, entrepreneurs in Jasper, all telling their stories. And we really endeavored to plant a seed through that episode. It's called Jasper, 1 year after the fire, to remind you that this town is wide open, their arms open, ready to welcome you back, to support those tourism operators, to support the restaurateurs and the hoteliers. A couple of episodes later, we talked to Lisa McGregor, a journalist, about some of the challenges that Jasperites have been encountering in rebuilding. You know, coming up to that 1 year anniversary, looking at the fact that not a lot of structures, I mean, some of them still standing, still waiting to be demolished, no homes really completed or rebuilt. And a wonderful friend of this show, Jasper Councillor Wendy Hall, reached out right after that, and she said there's more to talk about there. She said there are wonderful things happening here, and she says it's really important that we reiterate that to people. And so I wanted to give Wendy a special shout out. She sent us this photo. Check this out. And as you can see, construction is happening. She says this is right downtown. Look at this. They've got the big boom truck there, dropping in some prefabbed pieces. And she says things are happening everywhere. She says it's really exciting. She says, I think with an event this huge, she's talking about the fire, she says things take time. And she says, and there's no question about that. She says it's very difficult for people to be displaced. She says everybody, of course, is desperate to get home. And there's an after-action review. She says, I'm sure there will be more, but she says it really does feel like the community is coming together and healing. She says, I really want to make sure that people are focusing on residents moving forward. She says at the end of the day, when your community experiences something like this, it sucks. There's no doubt about that. She says, but we really appreciate all the love that we felt, the advocacy for our wonderful little community. And she says, as I'm texting this to you, she sent me this 16 hours ago. She says, another foundation is being poured today. She says, I'm watching it. She says, things are truly happening. She says, and I just want to let everybody know where the spirit of everybody is at. Wendy let us know a personal detail as well. Their new modular, their prefab home, she says, is going to be delivered the week of August 11th. She says, our forever home, she says, permanent, with 3 big hearts beside it. How exciting is that? We're thrilled to hear it. Of course, it does take time, like Wendy said. But to see that reconstruction and to see visitor traffic back there is something I know that is not just so important to the people of Jasper, but the province of Alberta and the nation. Sure, we look back, but we also look forward. And of course, on this episode of MyJasper Memories, it's the road trip edition. We want to make sure that you know exactly where you can source details on accommodation, on things to do in Jasper, and of course, that is Tourism Jasper's wonderful website. It's a wealth of resources there, including the Things to Do link. Whether you're looking to rent canoes out on Pyramid Lake, whether you're looking for perhaps a day hike, maybe the Edith Cavell Meadows, exploring Moline Lake, shopping in Jasper, horseback riding, and then, of course, all the winter activities as well, skiing, snowboarding, skating on the ODR. You can check it all out again at jasper.travel. And if all it would take is one more detail to convince you to get out there, let me also remind you that it's free to visit Jasper. Parks Canada is lifting the fees all the way through till September 2nd. Free admission through the park gates to all travelers. No strings attached. You don't have to register ahead of time. Plus, 25% off camping fees at participating locations. You can learn more on Tourism Jasper's website. That's jasper.travel. MyJasper Memories is proudly presented weekly right here on Real Talk by Tourism Jasper. Shout out to everybody that'll be out there this August long weekend. Well, it was all fired up in Camrose, Alberta just hours ago. About a dozen candidates stood in front of a packed house for a Camrose Candidates Forum. This ahead of the Battle River Crowfoot by-election. That's coming up August 18th. This is the one where Pierre Poilievre is doing his best to earn his way into the House of Commons, of course. But there's a field of more than 200 candidates. We've talked about this in past episodes. Of course, this is the longest ballot committee that's making this happen. 10 candidates making their pitches for why they would be the best to represent the riding, including the leader of Canada's Conservative Party. This forum was hosted by the Camrose and District Chamber of Commerce, and our good friend Shauna Feth was moderating the whole thing. She's been kind enough to join us just a few hours after that. Shauna, what was it like for you to step in front of a packed house with 10 candidates all arguing their case to be the next MP for Battle River Crowfoot? That must have been a wild room.
Yeah, it was. It was actually very congenial, I would say, and a lot of excitement and energy in the room just to hear what the candidates had to say on their particular platform. So sold out event. And in fact, the live stream, I understand, crashed at the beginning because there were so many people trying to watch it live online.
Did you get a sense through that forum? Like, was it obvious what like the top election issue is for folks in that riding? Was there a recurring theme when it came to not just what the audience members were asking about, but what the candidates were keen to talk about?
Well, definitely, the economy came out as being hugely important. Things like taxes and inflation rates and spending definitely came to the forefront in terms of, the comments and definitely the questions that were submitted and asked as well.
I know that you have to be very careful here to not indicate any affinity. I can't ask you who won the debates. I can't ask you who performed the best. I know you don't want to influence that election. I do want to ask you about this. You were at the, what do they call it? Like the PNWER, right? This is the Pacific Northwest Economic Region over the past while. For people that are not necessarily familiar with it, can you tell us like who was there and why it was so important for Alberta Chambers of Commerce to be represented there?
Absolutely. PNWER. So that stands for the Pacific Northwestern Economic Region. So what that is, Ryan, is it's a public-private partnership that brings together U.S. states, West U.S. states, and Canadian provinces to just tackle shared economic challenges and look at solutions and opportunities.
So this is kind of a different vibe at this one, right? Like this year's edition, obviously with everything that's happening with tariffs and trade, I don't think I need to explain that to anybody. Was there like a palpable different vibe there? Like, did it feel different than past events based on what's happening between the two countries?
Yeah, so this was my first time attending, so I can't speak to the difference between this event or past events, but there was a real sense of aligned vision around how to get projects completed, and not just in Canada, but through Canada into Alaska, all the different corridors and opportunities that the West Coast really provides in terms of that gateway from, along the West Coast from Seattle, Portland, et cetera, all the way up through BC and Alaska. So a lot of conversation about that, and a lot of conversation about, what's happening in Alberta around the one project, one approval process and Bill C5, and how that's going to potentially support some of these bigger, larger scale projects moving forward. And a lot of conversation around the various consultations that need to happen, and respectful engagement with our Indigenous communities on both sides of the border.
Did it feel like, did you leave there with kind of a positive sense? Did you leave there feeling optimistic?
Absolutely, Ryan. And I would share too that it's actually coming to Edmonton next year. So we're bringing it back home, which is really exciting. And, there's a great group of individuals that will be organizing that. And I really encourage anyone in the business community. So I've said this several times, but as you can imagine, I go to a lot of conferences. I am engaged in a lot of conferences. I sit on panels. I do keynotes, all of that kind of stuff. But this one was one of the better ones I've ever been to. And the reason for that was just the level of engagement with high-level government officials for the business community, and having that face-to-face time to really have conversations about what's actually going on the ground, and how can we really impact legislative changes to make some of these projects move quicker.
People can check out more about benefits of membership with the Alberta Chambers of Commerce on your website. That's abchamber.ca. We'll link to it in the show notes. You and your team have just completed this year's Alberta Perspective Survey, which I think is a huge part of your advocacy, and also, obviously for your team to better understand the priorities of your hundreds of members. Why is this? You guys have been doing this for like 6 or 7 years now, haven't you? Why is this such a top priority for you, like with regards to the operations and advocacy of it?
Yeah, well, so for us, when we look at advocating, and obviously Alberta Chambers of Commerce, it's a huge part of what we do. We really base it on two things. We base it on what are our policies. So every year, our entire membership of local chambers gets together and align on policy for provincial priorities. So we have that policy book, but then we also have the Alberta Perspectives Research. And what that does for us, it just gives us grounded information that we can share with elected officials on what is the business community actually feeling. And so, as you said, this is our 7th year doing this. We launched it back in 2019. Pre-COVID. So it's been really interesting to watch some of those trends over the course of time. This year, we're just really excited to have more than 600 businesses participate. And then we also survey an additional 800 members of the public. So what this does is it gives us a really excellent snapshot of what the attitudes and priorities are across the province, both for our business community and our members, but also for the public sector and what's happening there as well. So really excited about some of the interesting results that jumped out at us this year.
Yeah, no kidding. As we've been speaking, basically, this morning, the Bank of Canada confirming what I think most people were expecting, holding that the key interest rate, the cost of borrowing, essentially at 2.75%, citing uncertainty with what's happening in the United States. How much was that stuff factoring in to what your members were telling you? And what do you make, by the way, of the Bank of Canada's announcement today?
Well, I think it's a positive in terms of, I think right now there is so much uncertainty. So if we can hold one thing stable, and if that can be, opportunity for access to capital, then that's really important. It's really interesting that in the Alberta Perspectives Research, something that really stood out is for businesses, the top concern has shifted dramatically to federal government policies impacting them. So that kind of speaks to, the Bank of Canada changing the interest rate and how that would impact one way or another. So really nearly 1 in 4 businesses actually rate that as their biggest concern now, where since 2019, inflation was the top of that list. It was, it dropped substantially. So back 25%, back down to 25%. So really interesting statistics in terms of, what's happening south of the border and what we need to look at and focus on in Canada in terms of how do we do all of the things that we've talked about before, Ryan, and this was conversation at PNWER, but, economic corridors, energy corridors, interprovincial trade barriers, procurement practices, internal procurement practices, all of the things are actually coming to bear, and we're seeing it in the results of our survey as well. And we're also talking about it at major conferences like PNWER.
So you're at PNWER, you've got your survey results in. Obviously, when you're talking about not just Alberta's economy, but when you're talking about Canada's economy, Alberta's energy sector is always a part of that conversation. What are let's say your updated insights look like?
Well, I think, just in my comments previously, so, being that inflation is not top of mind anymore, that really it's about what are those policies impacting my business? And for the public, that was a similar concern, obviously. So it's more about how have we adapted to inflationary pressures? Because obviously, there's more concern around ongoing uncertainties related to the tariffs, to the trade relationships, to cross-border challenges. That's all become more top of mind, and it really underscores the importance of stable federal policy and really some certainty so that businesses can plan out, how they're going to diversify and expand, where they're making those next investments. And, I can't stress enough that certainty, it's going to be really interesting to see how movement is made on C5 in terms of the one project, one approval, and trying to get some of those national projects, greenlit, and how that's going to happen across the country. And sooner rather than later, it'll be great to see how that process is going to play out, because that's going to provide some of that certainty. If we can see some clarity around those growth and investment opportunities in this country, if we can see some clarity around the dismantling of some of those interprovincial trade barriers, of which, Ryan, you would have seen the announcements, Alberta and Ontario, Alberta and the Yukon now. So it's those barriers are coming down, and provinces are making those agreements with each other. And so it's positive if the proof is in the pudding. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to use one of my grandma's old lines, but
hey, they work.
We need to see these projects actually coming to fruition. And I think that's going to create a level of certainty that we haven't seen,
I don't remember where I read it, but I read somewhere recently that there was a lot of talk of hydrogen at PNWER. Is that like what's the Alberta angle on that? I mean, were you part of those conversations? Did you see that firsthand? How does that apply to what we're talking about with an eye on Alberta business?
Absolutely. So this is actually one of Alberta's competitive advantages. We already have abundant natural gas and extensive carbon capture infrastructure. And so it really emphasized the demand for those Alberta-based companies to provide the technology, equipment, services that will be critically important for these emerging hydrogen projects. And our businesses in Alberta are in a prime position to help shape the region's hydrogen economy. And when I say the region, I mean that Pacific Northwestern region, as per the conversations we were having. So I think that's an incredibly positive and a great conversation that's taking place.
Shauna, before we let you go, and I want to thank you for joining us on a beautiful summer morning. We appreciate it, but I don't want to let the opportunity pass to talk to you about what's happening with Alberta's financial picture, and your results have. How do I put this? They've hinted at some increasing concern. I think you know what I mean. Can you take it away and give our audience a sense of what your team has discovered from hearing from these hundreds of members?
Yeah, Ryan. So there has been an uptick in concerns about Alberta's fiscal situation, and particularly from the business sector, we saw that, and especially in primary industries. While perceptions of provincial finances remain positive overall, there's definitely increased caution due to ongoing, the things we've talked about, the ongoing trade uncertainties and the economic environment. It really suggests businesses are looking closely at how the province manages its finances, especially in this period, as we've talked about, where there's global price volatility, there's uncertainty around trade and tariffs, and really, looking at those oil and gas commodities and how those prices can go up or down on any given day, and how that impacts our bottom line from a budget perspective in the province.
Okay, so I guess this is just like this is kind of what business does all the time, but just keeping there's a keen awareness of what the different levels of government, in particular, probably in this context, what the provincial government's doing, what the budget outlook's going to look like, what the actual financial reality is going to look like over the next 3 to 6 to 12 months, kind of a thing. I know that your team is going to be making that full report available. We're talking about the Provincial Priorities Survey. When can people expect that if they really want to sink their teeth into it?
Yeah, just stay tuned to our website. We'll actually be doing the press release and releasing the entire report this week. So just keep your eyes open, and it'll be coming out here shortly in the next couple of days.
Okay, perfect. And again, that's abchamber.ca. People can read more about the benefits of membership. You can check out the Alberta priorities and find different ways to get involved, including upcoming news and events. Again, that's abchamber.ca. We'll link to it in the show notes. That's where Shauna Feth is the president and CEO. Have a wonderful rest of your week. It's nice to see you again.
You as well, Ryan. Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Yeah,
We'll see you in
too.
August.
Thanks very much, Shauna. We'll see you in August. Shauna Feth, of course, joining us with her Eye on Alberta Business, once a month, proudly presented by the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. If you're a business owner, if you're working in one of the industries we've discussed, I'm particularly intrigued by that hydrogen conversation. I don't think we've spent enough time talking about it. Johnny, we did that one episode where we had that, there's that community just outside Sherwood Park. Remember that? They're building, it's like Canada's first community that's like heated and fueled essentially exclusively by hydrogen. And that episode, that was like within the last year. You can find it in our podcast archives or on YouTube. I just felt like I was just sitting there like trying to take it all in and learn about it. And then we had audience members. In many circumstances, this audience knows way more than I do about the stuff we're talking about. And they were talking about blue hydrogen versus green hydrogen, and there's all kinds of different things to learn. So make sure you check that out. And of course, let us know what you think to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Craig Baird, did he inspire something in you to hit Highway 1 and to bake a road trip into your summer plans and all? I was reading the live chat as he was talking to us. Everybody has their Highway 1. Everybody has their Trans-Canada Highway story.
Yeah, I'm on that road every summer, man. I'm going to weddings outside the province, Kelowna, BC, Jasper. It's like I'd say it's not my one happy place, but it's just a happy place for me. I like the open road. I like turning on music, cracking the one window to my right, shotgun just a little, the AC on half, sunlight coming through, sunglasses on, not too hot, not too cold, 3 drinks in the console next to me,
Non-alcoholic beverages.
No, like a coffee, an energy drink, and a water. Always rocking 3, or like a shake of some sort.
Yeah.
And it's just a peaceful place. And it's funny because like Craig, I love his show, first of all. I listen to it all the time.
He does such a good job.
Oh, amazing. And like guy's got to be on the Calm app. Like he could he could read you anything and your stress levels cut in half. Just got a great way of storytelling, and that voice just brings it across awesome. But I often think that when I'm on the highway, and he brought some of those things to life today. Is like I wonder what driving to Jasper or BC or Kelowna or to Vancouver from Alberta or back to Ontario, whatever, was like when this thing was
wild.
Not only being built, like before, when it was just. I know this isn't the exact analogy, but like when machetes just cut through forests and it was just an old dirt road, right? And then eventually it became what it is today, which is just an incredible, system of highways. But like the trailblazers that had to like drive on this thing going like 50 the whole way because it was full of bumps and rocks.
And like he said,
he's
like families had to pack like all these extra spare tires.
For sure. You're going to pop like 3.
I'm always the guy that's like, my vehicle currently, I have my readout on my dash. My vehicle currently is telling me I have 13 kilometers till it's empty. So I'm always the guy that's like pushing it on the highway, kind of like trying to keep it in like a higher gear, low revs. But like, there weren't like gas stations everywhere. I thought it was a fascinating angle when he was talking about
rest stops
all of like
everywhere.
the pop-up tourist. I think of the Enchanted Forest. Everybody's in BC. Everybody's probably got their own favorite, tourist attraction on the side of the Trans-Canada.
It's incredibly well planned too. Like the moment I start getting tired on that highway, driving wherever, it's always like rest stop 2 kilometers.
Yeah.
Like it just knows that you've been driving probably for an hour and a half, 2 hours. You need to pull over. You need to go to the bathroom. It's just it's incredibly designed, and I always think of that when I'm on the highway. So it was great for him to bring to life. I thought it was funny about the 2 dual openings of the highway though.
Wasn't that funny?
How they were having like a competition.
It was BC.
Like, who's gonna cut the tape, right?
BC holds its own opening of the Trans-Canada Highway, which is that kind of feels like something that kind of feels like something Alberta would do these days. Like we built like we Alberta would be like we don't pave our streets with gold, but we'd use like a black gold. We'd use like a higher quality asphalt. Then we could go on like a billboard campaign campaign of like Alberta. Our highways are, our stretch of the Trans-Canada Highway is a little bit nicer,
And to cue back to your question, the modern day Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, you got time to think about it.
Not time. I was kind of on the spot. I was like,
I did put you on the spot. I put you on the spot.
I was just intrigued by his conversation, then I was a little thrown off. But I don't know, like 20 years ago, I would have said probably, even though she had already passed, I think, Anna Nicole Smith. Everyone thought Anna Nicole Smith was the modern
but she just looked like her.
No, but she acted. She was very popular in her heyday. She was set to be like one of the biggest movie stars ever before her downfall. Today, I would say it's Sydney Sweeney, though.
Sydney Sweeney.
Yeah, most likely.
I'm like rapidly Googling so I can see Sydney Sweeney. Sometimes I feel 95 years old, and this is
you
a
are
good thing
87.
because you help me get up to speed. Oh yeah, Sydney Sweeney. There we go. Sydney Sweeney's racy ad. I'm just reading FoxNews.com. Sydney Sweeney's racy ad sparks outrage, but fans defend her anti-woke style. Okay, interesting. She's got some controversy around her. Marilyn had controversy around her. There you go. I saw somebody else. I don't know, have your comment here in front of me, or I'd love to recognize your name in our live chat powered by Park Power. Somebody said it's got to be Katy Perry. They said, and JT in brackets. Did you see this? You saw the report?
Well, they went for dinner.
Canada's
now everyone
former
thinks
Prime Minister.
They're sleeping together.
Justin Trudeau. Well, I don't know. Maybe I don't know if they're sleeping together, but maybe they're exploring. She broke up with Orlando Bloom. Maybe he's he's on the market. He's single as far as everybody knows.
I don't think there's. I don't know. I've met the former prime minister. I don't think there'd be much like.
You don't feel like it's a fit?
I don't feel like there'd be an enthralling, intelligent conversation going on between him and Katy Perry.
You're
Orlando Bloom.
Which
Bloom's
one are you underestimating?
Katy Perry for sure.
I don't know. I'm trying to find. I wanted to show you. Justin Trudeau just posted. This is dedicated to everybody in our live chat that just loves every time that we talk about Justin Trudeau. This one's for you. But I thought this was kind of interesting. He took his son Xavier. He posted this just the other day, a couple of days ago, to Zermatt, Switzerland, for some mountaineering and hiking. And said, and also more melted cheese than anyone should safely. Look at this guy, though, for the benefit of those on the podcast. Like, this is Canada's former prime minister, still a young buck. I think he's like barely 50, and getting some serious mountain climbing. This is not a joke. Like, he's tied off. He's in a harness, but still, I mean, I would be shitting my pants if I was doing this. I don't know if that's something I'd be interested in. Yeah. But he maybe
rock climbing is the one thing where I'm like,
forget about it.
Why are you doing this?
Why are you doing this?
Why are you? Why?
Yeah.
What is the point of this?
We talk about Jasper all the time. Obviously, I remember this was a couple winters ago, and everybody's excited for when Maligne Canyon will reopen. Just to let you know, if you're hoping to get out there August long, it's not currently open. But in the winter, you can go in and you go on these like guided walks. They give you like the crampons and the helmets and everything you need. Not technically crampons. I don't want to get the real mountaineers chirping us. But we sat there and I watched ice climbers. I feel for like an hour, and it is a wild sport, right? Because not only are you like just going straight up, but also like and they know what they're doing. In understanding the ice and the kind of the behavior of ice, like how it can crack or whatever. But like I just when I look at things like that, when I look at sports like that or hobbies like that, I think somebody on planet Earth was the very first one to do this. Right? Like milking a cow is another example. Someone was the very first to do it.
Well, that was out of
necessity. Someone was the very first human to drink cow's milk. But someone was the very first to ice climb. I think it's bonkers.
I don't know. I get it. It's action. It's adventure. It's testing the limits and the human spirit and all that crap. But in my mind, I have a short list of things that I just think like who came up with this was like, yeah, rock climbing's up there. Hot air ballooning's another one.
Hot air ballooning.
Like let's invent a form of air
example.
travel that involves fire, is super slow, and has like many chances for you to die, fall out, wind blow you. It's just, it's crazy.
Yeah. I saw, who was it? Someone in our chat. I'm all over the chat today because there's like 10 conversations happening. I love shows like this. Yes, this show is for you road trippers, but obviously real talkers are all chiming in on their favorite Trans-Canada Highway memories, as well is when I asked Craig what he thinks is the greatest Canadian show of all time, and he gave a shout out to the Polka Dot Door. I saw somebody in the chat say, "What is the Polka Dot Door?" And I just
Are you kidding me right
Can you
now?
show my screen right now? I managed to track it down here on YouTube. But
Pokeroo, man.
the Polka Dot Door, and this is courtesy of RetroOntario.com. This takes me back to the days, like even my parents, my parents were aware, limited screen time. We weren't allowed to watch whatever we wanted for as long as we wanted, but we were allowed to watch Polka Dot Door. And this takes me back to like old, big Sony Trinitron rear projection TVs that you had to turn on by like pulling the knob out, and then you had to twist the dial if you wanted to change the channel. This is one of, in my opinion, the greatest Canadian shows of all time. I agree with Craig there. I would also give a shout out to today's special. Yay!
So they were on back to back, and the big thing about, like, for people who don't know, Polka Dot Door was Pokeroo was like this mascot of the show, and one host. There was always a male and female host, and the one host every show would run into Pokeroo, and then the other one would come, and they'd be like, "You just missed Pokeroo." Like the other one would never get to see Pokeroo.
Yeah.
Like it was this entity. Oh, you're kidding! Like they didn't exist, right? And then at the end of the show, Pokeroo would come out, and they'd all dance together, and they do, "How'd you do, Pokeroo? What do you
I already
say,
know.
Pokeroo?" And it was just, that was the whole thing. You were always hoping the other host would find out Pokeroo exists, and it never happened. It was
the
like
best.
there was no,
They
payoff.
were Blippy and Miss Rachel before anybody was dreaming of the internet.
But then today's special, like almost a little scary when I was younger. Like, wasn't her name Murphy, or who's the mouse?
Oh gosh, I don't remember.
Anyways, there were episodes that were like, there was one that was like 2 shows long where they were going into the burrows of the department store and like finding old like antiques and things written on the wall. And I remember thinking when I was a kid, I was like, this is pretty scary. But it had a kind of a scary thing because it's at night. It's an old it's a department store closed up. The mannequin comes to life.
Yeah,
like
Jeff,
there's a lot
right?
of like, the museum. What's that museum movie?
Night at the Museum.
Yeah, there's a lot of that kind of vibe to it. But it was so early and old school. But yeah, that was another one of my shows. I loved watching those two back to back when I was a kid. Yeah.
I absolutely loved it.
Sam Crenshaw.
It's like so. I feel, and I already know. I'll give people yet another peek behind the curtain, presented by John's Drapery and Curtains. Check them out online. No, that's
John's Hot Air Ballooning. Now in Edmonton.
But I already know what you're going to do as soon as we sign off and then we start going to work on putting our highlights together and booking tomorrow's show. I already know you're going to have classic Canadiana on all the screens in the studio.
Well, we'll see if we get dinged for showing those 2 shows.
Oh, we'll
back to back
definitely.
first
YouTube is definitely going to demonetize this episode for us showing those. Hopefully they don't shut us down. You can let us know what your favorite.
I love these comments. Danger Bay was another one too.
Oh,
that theme song.
The Friendly Giant, Mr. Dress Up. This from LJ,
Look
Romper
Up.
Room, and Popcorn Playhouse. I kind of forgot about that one.
Friendly Giant.
Scarlett
Look Up.
says Avonlea. Beachcombers from Jim. Friendly Giant. Let me see if I can
Look
find
up,
that one.
way up, and he'd grab the little chair and he'd put it in the. And he had a Craig Baird thing kind of going on. He'd be like, "How's everyone doing today?" He had this really low, calm voice. Yeah.
Yeah, look at that. Remember this? Look at this. Like
There's a bit of snow on the road today. We've got
snow
the
clearing with
shovels
the
out
models. These shows would have been so much fun to work on.
They were
back in the
amazing.
day as
Back.
well,
You know
right?
what? This is what I miss. I miss like the still shot animation, like I miss the miniature, like we're showing on our screen now. If you're watching our episode on YouTube, like how they formed like miniature towns and stuff, and I miss puppeteering. I feel like everything's going to like not CGI, but animation is all with computers now and everything, right? This is kind of a lost art form, right?
Yeah.
There he is.
Well, yeah. So we're showing that right now. Mark Doran in our live chat says we loved watching Friendly Giant. It's why I like Ryan's Friendly Giant shirt today.
You have a Friendly Giant
Do I have
shirt
a
on?
Friendly Giant shirt today? I don't
Oh,
know.
because it's kind of
I
like
guess
the old
it's kind of
school.
like a. This
Yeah.
is a bit of a medieval. I don't
That's
know.
the kind of shirt like every grown male wore underneath like his armor back in the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was
like the button up long sleeve.
It was Under Armour before there was Under Armour, right? Is that it? Back on the Highway 1 thing, I love this. Gosh, I've lost your comment. I'm sorry. Somebody was letting us know that they had just listened to a podcast where a family had traveled the entire Trans-Canada Highway in an EV, which would be fascinating. I wonder how they did it.
That'd be good. Yeah,
probably.
check off how you can do it.
What a good way to prove how you can do it. I know that now. In particular with Teslas, my EV experience is limited, so don't hate on me, but I know in Teslas they can always sort of route you around to where the charging stations are. I wonder if that might take you back 75 years where you have to dip into the United States in certain places if you need to charge your EV, or maybe you can do it. Wouldn't that be cool?
What's the reason for your visit? I'm just stealing your electricity.
Just stealing your power. I'm here to take back some of the power that we're sending you from Windsor and Prince George. And then I also saw Wise Kyle in there said that he has been at mile 0 on both the east and west coast, which is kind of cool. Said that Sudbury has the world's largest nickel. Do you have a favorite world's largest installation, by the way? I think that in Mundare, the world's largest sausage is the funniest one because it's just very.
What do we have here? We have the egg. We have the.
As far as I know, in Edmonton on the Avenue of Champions, they call it. As Johnny rolls his eyes and shakes his head. No offense to Alberta Avenue, it's a great community, but Avenue of Champions, I don't know. But I believe they claim it's the world's largest baseball bat. It's got to be one of the biggest baseball bats in the world.
And then we got that egg.
Yeah, the Pasanka in Vegreville, which was Craig's personal favorite. You got somebody said that there's the world's largest beaver, which is somewhere in Canada. What a Google search this is going to be. World's largest beaver, Canada. Let's see what they say. The giant beaver in the town of Beaver Lodge. Shout out to the town of Beaver Lodge and their giant beaver sculpture. Check this out. You can actually check out beaverlodge.ca. They say large landmarks are starting to appear all over Canada. Nowhere truer than in Alberta. Beaver Lodge celebrated its 75th anniversary of incorporation on July 21st of 2004. They've just marked their 96th anniversary. Shout out to Beaver Lodge. And part of their celebration included the unveiling of a giant beaver sculpture on the highway corridor.
Wow. I mean, in Canada, I think the largest totem pole, that's in Alert, BC, right? That's pretty cool. Yeah, I think that would be my... But if we're talking Alberta, it would have to be that dinosaur in Drumheller for me.
Oh, yeah. World's largest... what was the one you just said? The world's largest...
World's largest dinosaur, yeah.
No, the totem pole.
The totem pole. It's Alert...
I've never seen it.
Alert Bay.
Alert Bay, British Columbia. 173 feet. I'll get you a photo here in a second. 53 meters tall. Yeah. Holy, 173 feet. How can I even do this justice with a photo? Well, I mean, here's part of it, but this is, man, oh man, that is absolutely stunning. You know, somebody, it was an elder actually, I think it was in Jasper, mentioned to me, we were talking about euphemisms, we were talking about turns of phrase, things you can still say, things you shouldn't say anymore. And this guy said to me, he said, he said there's a common misconception. He said when people talk about someone that's at the bottom of the totem pole.
That was where the highest ranking chief was, right? Yeah.
That's what he said. He said that he was laughing. He's like, even when you use that phrase, he says, he told me, he says, it's not offensive to me, but it's hilarious. He says, because it's completely inaccurate.
Yeah, like the wisest elder
the
was
bottom
on
of the
bottom.
totem pole is like the position of honor.
Another reason to
really
just avoid saying it because it's wrong.
Yeah, exactly, right?
It's inaccurate.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. Favorite Canadian television shows, Canadian institutions. I mean, you got to shout, even more recently, like I saw, Bill Wilichka, former Much Music VJ. I had a chance to work with him at Breakfast Television for a short period of time. He's just pushed out a book. I saw he just posted a picture of him and Hulk Hogan when Hulk had passed. I didn't realize, by the way, Hulk Hogan's complicated legacy. Holy
You
smokes.
didn't know?
No, I had no idea.
Oh, man.
I had no idea that, I had no idea some of the stuff he'd said and kind of the racist attitudes, and he had
circumvented
the other wrestlers to cheat them out of money allegedly. I don't know. And
tape
I was just like,
with
holy
his best friend's wife.
I mean, the sex tape was someone released that without his he sued.
Well, Gawker, he brought down Gawker, which was huge.
Yeah,
huge website, pretty much TMZ back in the day, and he won over $100 million and bankrupted them, right?
Yeah, wild. Yeah, Dubious says Hogan was a bigot. I honestly, I'm embarrassed. I was never I guess like I had friends that were like huge into wrestling. For me, it was always like, I could name, I know like Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man and all that kind of stuff, Andre the Giant, obviously. And through those, like that kind of like that period of like, I guess it would have been like, mid 80s to kind of mid 90s. But then it kind of like turned, and then there was like NWO, and then there was like, it kind of like started.
Yeah.
And Triple H.
Well, what happened
and
is his profile was going down. He was actually, that's one thing. He was very smart to like turn heel. Because basically his profile was going down. He was actually getting booed while he was still a good guy because people were kind of sick of the whole Hulk Hogan thing. And he flipped it, became like this heel. And then after that was all over, came back again.
Yeah.
To be the hero. He had like, that was just crazy.
He had like a cultural staying power.
Yeah, very.
But
are we surprised that a guy like who looks, sounds, rides a motorcycle.
Hey,
like,
brother.
It turned out to be like a racist, homophobe.
Well, no. Now we're going to hear from 1,000 motorcycle owners that are like,
no,
what
but
the fuck, Johnny?
I'm just saying.
Jeez. Anyway, so to bring my thought full circle as we swerve around on this road trip special, like much music.
Not about motorcycle.
Much music, maybe not necessarily a show, although maybe I'll shout out Electric Circus. But what a
great show.
What a
now
great
you're
show,
about
man.
language.
But if you want to talk about like if you want to talk about like pure Canadiana, like Speaker's Corner, Electric Circus, like back in the day, Much Music was like an institution.
Well, that 4 blocks, they started some things that were almost, I mean, we always look to the Americans for entertainment and everything. They always do stuff first. But the way they did things with Electric Circus and like Speaker's Corner was pretty much social media before social media was social media. It was a way to get rants out. It was a
like
way,
TikTok.
It was like sitting down and doing a TikTok. So those whole 4 blocks around that building, going into the city, living just outside of Toronto, that was the first place you went. You either went there or the CN Tower and went up to the glass floor. But that was like a mecca to like, you looked in the window and the VJs were doing stuff live and there was, the musicians and artists performing. Electric Circus was going on. You'd hit up Speaker's Corner. And now it's all gone. It's evaporated. Right?
Yeah, I know, wild. Although I went and bought... I'm actually like I went and bought stamps the other day. I like sending letter mail. I still like sending handwritten notes. Like when it's really, we had a shout out to Real Talker Linda, who just sent us like the most thoughtful, incredible card in letter mail to Mercer Warehouse, which was so meaningful on the occasion of our 1,000th episode a few episodes ago and Johnny's birthday. She included a contribution to the show, and it just meant so much. So I'm like, I guess I'm spoiling it right now, Linda. There's a surprise coming in your mailbox. But I went and I wanted to send it letter mail, and I didn't want to buy just any, this Canada Post, they can just like, throw on a stamp there for you. Sometimes it drives me nuts if the stamp's not straight. I like the stamp to be straight right in the corner with equal borders on all sides, And I say, so I might as well pick up a book of stamps. I was out of stamps. And she says, have you seen these new ones? She hands me the stamps. There's Much Music commemorative stamps available right now at Canada Post. How cool is that?
Nice.
Times out perfectly to our conversation. Matthew, by the way, and we're going to get some more of your comments here. We're just having some fun, having a coffee on this morning. If you're just tuning in on our Real Talk live stream presented by California Closets, welcome. Make sure you check out our Craig Baird episode. Talks about the world's largest fill-in-the-blanks on the Trans-Canada Highway. Matthew brings us up to speed, says that Avenue sign, the Avenue of Champions in Edmonton, the world's largest baseball bat, says it's been missing a letter for years, so now it's the Avenue of Champion. Says we must find out who that champion is. Thank you, Matthew. We'll take submissions to talk@ryanjesperson.com. More of your favorite Canadiana TV shows, Trans-Canada Highway stops in just a quick second. First, I have to remind you, these episodes absolutely do not happen without the support of North Road Investment Council. You're on the road today, and maybe, as you're kind of daydreaming, watching those beautiful trees go by, staring at the vistas, that fabulous Canadian landscape, you're reflecting on your career, your retirement goals. At North Road Investment Council, they're working with Canadians that have done just that, built very successful careers. Now you want to make sure, though, that your wealth is being organized to deliver a successful retirement. The typical North Road client has at least $2 million in investable assets, often coming from analytical, detail-driven professions. Maybe you're a dentist, maybe an architect, maybe an engineer. If this is resonating with you, the team at North Road would love to open a conversation with you. and let you know what sets them apart, what makes them different. You can check out their website, including details on digital risk advisory services. Nobody else has a full-time employee in wealth management working on this, making sure that you're protected online. NorthRoadIC.com is where you can check that out. Start a conversation built on clarity, discipline, and true alignment. If your travels through the August long weekend take you near a Friesen Brothers, make sure you don't drive past without stopping by. Unbelievable offerings in 16 different Alberta communities. Johnny, we celebrated Wyatt Rudy's 10th birthday last night.
Nice. With
friends and family in the backyard, served up beautiful homemade burger patties, and of course, we served up Friesen Brothers grass-fed beef. I also made sure to grab some of that warm potato salad because it's always a hit. Our Auntie B always walks in the door with Uncle Ron, and she looks me right in the eyes and she says, please tell me you have the Friesen Brothers warm potato salad. I said, you got it, girl. You can pick it up yourself, whether it's grab and go from their beautiful kitchen, whether it's fresh ingredients that you're going to be preparing at home. Friesen Brothers has you covered. Don't forget, August 1st, your next chance to save 15% on grocery purchases of $75 or more. Summer, a perfect time to put a little more money in your pocket by going solar. If your cost of utilities has basically blown you back a little bit, you've had to make some sacrifices with your budget, or maybe you just want to do what you can to shrink our environmental footprint. If you're thinking about going solar, it's never been more doable. There's that Canada Greener Homes Loan. There's programs like the Clean Energy Improvement Program. You can read more about all of it at kuby.ca. That's kuby.ca. Gone are the days where you have to shell out the full amount to cover a solar panel install. You don't have to come up with X amount of dollars to get started. You can turn your roof or any space into something that actually saves you money long term. And the team at Kuby, they're going to handle everything for you, right? They're going to walk you through every step of the way, starting with that free solar quote. It's easy to find on their website. Cut your energy bills and make a move toward a cleaner, brighter future. Head to Kuby, kuby.ca/solar to get your free quote, or you can give them a call, 780-340-5829. And we want to recognize our friends at UCAN Youth Services. We're so proud to be partnering with this nonprofit charitable organization. We're going to make sure that we do everything we can to have their upcoming capital campaign on everybody's radar. They've just got the keys to a brand new location, downtown Edmonton, right across from Grant MacEwan University. This is going to allow them to double their services. That means twice as many young people between the ages of 12 and 24 are going to receive critical supports that they need to get out of harm's way and onto a path of prosperity, whether that's education, whether that's employment, whether that's stable housing or food security. You can read more about what the team at UCAN does on their website. That's ucan.ca. And please consider a donation, or maybe even including UCAN Youth Services as you do your estate planning. Again, that's ucan.ca.
Yeah, I got nothing against people on motorcycles. Just to be.
Oh, you realized you didn't want to pick a fight with the Hells
Well,
Angels?
no, not them, but like I recently donated a photo booth to this fundraiser with these guys, Ubaka. I think it's urban.
Okay.
Urban Bulldogs Against Kids Abuse, and
I love these guys.
Yeah, and they donate to the Today Center for Family Violence, and I actually played one of the members, Mike Reese's wedding. So he hit me up and said, hey, we're raising money for kids. So I gave him a discount or a gift certificate for a free photo booth for my wedding company, right? So I'm actually doing that for whoever won it this weekend. So those guys are amazing, caring, open-minded, diverse. They're amazing. So what I was saying was it was in jest, but I obviously didn't mean people who drive motorcycles are bigots.
I just checked outside the window of our historic downtown location here at Mercer Warehouse, and the bike gang that had just shown up with,
well, I heard
with
the
tire
revving.
irons.
I heard the revving during your ad reads.
Yeah, they just gave us the peace sign, and they've now driven off. So your ass is safe. Is Ubaka? Is this the group they show up like when kids are in courtrooms?
Oh yeah,
and
kids
kids
support them like if they don't have anyone, because a lot of times like abused kids have been taken advantage of because maybe they have a single family home, or maybe no parents at all, foster kids, whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, I love what they do. So yeah, basically, like there's, it's always sickening when a young person, in many cases like a child, has to be in a courtroom, and in some circumstances where their abuser or their alleged abuser, let me say, we all know the fucking truth, but their alleged abuser is in there as well. And to make sure that these kids are feeling supported and as safe as possible, you'll get like a row of like vested bikers in the courtroom, which I think is just an incredible way. I'm always like, I'm okay with gray areas in some areas, and this is an area in dealing with the scum of the earth. Gray areas to me are perfectly fine. I know that we'll get somebody leaving a comment that was an unproductive comment, but guess what? Doesn't matter. Ms. KD is wondering, who doesn't have a photo of the giant peach in Penticton? She says, I'm not sure if it's the world's largest, but that's definitely a photo op for sure. Kathy says, all this talk of the world's largest is reminding me of that Corner Gas episode. We should probably shout out if you're going to talk about iconic Canadian television programming, Corner Gas has got to be there. I saw some more shouts out for Beachcombers for sure. A lot of people, how about this from Tony, who says a lot of these classic Canadian shows were on CBC. Tony, they were almost exclusively on CBC. She says, and yet the right screaming about canceling or defunding the CBC. What a shame, they just don't get it. One of the interesting points, and I've been guilty of this in past, and I've owned up to this on the show before. I was pretty critical of Schitt's Creek before I started watching it. I remember doing a big thing on my former radio show. Yeah, my former radio show, because I'd not seen it yet. And I was just kind of musing when people were talking about defunding the CBC, and I'm going, I think you can always justify, and I do sincerely, even present day me believes this, that it's really important to have well-funded, reputable journalism across the country, accessible and available to everybody. I think it's important to have small community stories being told. It's important to have political accountability at an arm's reach from government in a not-for-profit scenario. In other words, you can't leave it to like these greedy bastards that have picked up like Post Media and all the big TV networks, and they're doing everything they can to circumvent CRTC and CanCon, Canadian Content Regulations. You can't trust these people to make sure that Canada's history, or to make sure that the political stories or the crime stories or what have you needs to be covered. There has to be an entity there. I think you can justify that. But I've not always felt like it made sense for Canadian taxpayers to be on the hook to produce for-profit television series, things like Schitt's Creek. That was until I watched Schitt's Creek and it started winning, I think it won 15 Emmy Awards. And what I think it did was, and I'll eat my words on that one, is because although obviously it did a lot to keep Eugene Levy, I say this respectfully, one of Canada's all-time comedic geniuses, not like he needed the help, but it reintroduced Eugene Levy back in front of Canadians again. And of course, you look at the star cast, Catherine O'Hara, is absolutely brilliant in that show. Even Dan Levy, Eugene's son, kind of became the Dan Levy that everybody knows and loves through Schitt's Creek. But I think it also reminded people that great television, that great content can be created in Canada. Oh, yeah. And I don't see a lot of, there are some other ones. I saw that there was Law and Order Toronto or something like that.
Yeah, that's a big one. McDavid likes it.
McDavid likes
it?
Yeah,
he posts about it. Yeah.
What? Are you serious?
Dude, he was on the commercials when they relaunched.
What?
Doing the dun dun dun.
Really?
The
dun,
little,
dun, dun, dun,
so they had a
dun.
bunch of Canadians doing that with, doing it with their dun dun dun. And I think McDavid was the last one on the commercials. But
wow.
Yeah, the CBC, when I was growing up, there was a lot of great shows on there. I mean, can it rival Hollywood? No. But
but it's not supposed to.
All those shows, North of 60, Corner Gas, The Nature of Things, David Suzuki, and even the newer stuff now that I do tune in and check out because I want to support Canadian content and I want to see where it's come to. There's Arctic Air, Wild Cards, The Porter.
Yeah.
People who watch CBC there is a lot of well-produced, well-acted entertainment produced here in Canada, and it could probably be 10 times better. It just doesn't have the same financial backing as somewhere Bollywood or LA or wherever the major movies are made today.
Yeah, I'm seeing more comments. Kids in the Hall. How do you not mention that? Obviously, Craig shouted out SCTV. Trailer Park Boys, arguably the greatest Canadian television show of all time.
Was that on CBC? I don't think so.
No, it wasn't on CBC, but proudly produced in Canada.
Yeah, of course.
Proudly produced in Canada. Ms. B says John Candy used to do interviews about filming in Edmonton. I think it was a Letterman interview, wasn't it? Back in the day, it was like, who is it? Who with? Was it John Candy and Eugene Levy? Maybe it was. Maybe it was Rick Moranis. I don't remember. But it was like early in Letterman's tenure, and he was talking about. He's like, so tell us about Edmonton, like acting as though it's like, tell us about Siberia, or like tell us about Jupiter. And Candy was talking about filming SCTV in that ITV studio, now the Global Television Studio. It's still there for now. And he was talking about how the crew, they would have like the SCTV crew, and he's describing, he's very complimentary. You can find the interview on YouTube. And he was very complimentary to the crew. He goes, but the thing that would suck is they'd be like taping like mid-episode, but then the Oilers game would be starting, and the crew would have to leave to go op the Oilers show, the Oilers broadcast. He goes, and then they would come back and we would resume taping, which is like, can you imagine? Imagine Saturday Night Live is like halfway through its episode, but they have to go op like the New York Knicks game.
Yeah.
And so then we'll be back in 3 hours.
That's one of the most, it's got so many views on YouTube, that John Candy and David Letterman, because David Letterman's trying to set John Candy up with this story, and John Candy's kind of like we all love John Candy, but we know he was alcohol, drug, smoke, like he was abusing a lot of things. And
What?
I think what?
Well, why are we stomping on John Candy?
We're not stomping on him. I'm
Okay.
just saying in this interview he was a little absent-minded. Like,
Was he?
Dave was trying to like lob him a soft one to be like,
Yeah.
do you ever have any complications with the tech room and stuff like this? And he was like, well, no, we like Edmonton. He couldn't. And then he finally clicked with it and was like, oh yeah, the hockey, right? And by the end, the payoff wasn't as big. But that is one of the, like, if you go to YouTube, that's one of the David Letterman, one of the most watched clips. That and the one where, who was the guy who played the Joker? I'm forgetting his name now. In the Joker movies.
Oh, like
Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Do you remember when he did the
I
crazy?
was like,
Do you
Jack
remember-
Nicholson?
Do you remember he did the crazy, like, he pretended he was a rapper on David Letterman?
Yes.
And freaked him out? I
Yeah.
think that's numbered like the 1 and 2 clips that are watched.
But that has to be a bit. That was a bit.
It was a
Don't you
huge
think?
bit.
Yeah,
He
like, there's no
actually-
way that Letterman didn't know that was coming.
So he went on, Letterman's now, obviously Jimmy Fallon has Letterman's position. Joaquin Phoenix a few weeks ago went on and was like,
No. Colbert has Letterman's.
Oh, Colbert, sorry.
And what's
Yeah.
his nuts? Jimmy Fallon has Leno's.
that's right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting
Yeah.
confused.
No, that's a good.
But I saw a clip like a couple weeks ago. Joaquin Phoenix went on the new Late Show with Colbert, obviously.
Yeah.
And was basically like, he apologized. He's like, I'm sorry. I'm so embarrassed. Like,
Really?
He's like, this was one of the most, I watch it back now and I'm like, it makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't know why I felt like I had to go into those moments, but he says for some reason, like, it helped him to get into, what do you call
Yes.
it when you're like a method actor or
Method
worker?
acting.
And he's like, that's what I was doing. But when I go back, it seems obnoxious.
Huh. How about this from Rabies in the chat? What's up? In our live chat, powered by Park Power, says CBC had a great series called Push, which is fantastic.
Hello.
I wanted to just remind you that on the 25th of July, this is just like less than a week ago, Bean Gill, one of the stars of Push, joined us on that episode. It's called, the full episode's called Long Ballot Shenanigans, Disability Pride Month. And she joined us alongside Paralympic gold medal winning athlete Carrie Anton and Brad Bartko to talk about accessibility, to talk about inclusion. It was actually just an absolutely wonderful conversation. I'm really grateful that they agreed to join us. And so, Rabies, I want to make sure you're aware of that. You can see Bean in action there.
On the CBC.
Yeah, and about a year ago, we also, of course, had a couple of cast members on the show from Push, and that was a really fun.
They were that one guy was so funny.
Dude, that guy was hilarious.
That was so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, CBC has great, like Mr. D, that's a great show.
Jerry D, yeah.
What else? They got North of North, which is like an update of North of 60. It follows a female Indigenous young girl up there, and that's pretty funny.
David T is like, how has nobody mentioned Degrassi?
Of course, Degrassi.
That is.
And then my Albertans are probably watching Heartland. You know, that's another show that's pretty popular. But they're
is that like a Western show?
Yeah. It's kind of like it's like a Yellowstone for Canadians kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Without as much violence and.
Krabby Chris says Monday nights and Murdoch is my jam. Is that Murdoch Mysteries? It says I love the new Law and Order, by the way, on City TV as well. Yeah, I'm still thinking about the John Candy stuff. That's rather talk about like I'm not comparing them. Why am I even going to say this out loud? I'm not comparing them based on girth. I'm comparing them based on careers. I'm talking about their brilliance robbed. But I think if you look at two brilliant careers stopped short, and obviously, personal lives factored into a certain degree, of course. But Chris Farley, John Candy, two of my absolute, I just think
Belushi
two of the most.
Too.
Yeah, Belushi's another great
We're
example.
talking girth.
it's not a girth comment.
But
I'm
no,
just,
guys who-
But I'm just like unhealthy lifestyles,
Drugs,
obviously.
alcohol, smoking.
But at the same time, like pure brilliance.
Genius.
And
Genius.
John Candy, I can't think of like a more endearing, like the way that he connected with his audiences. Like Uncle Buck is like one of my favorite movies
I
of all
was just
time.
going to say adults and kids. Like when I was a kid, Uncle Buck was one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
But he was also like a raunchy stand-up comedian that was kind of veiled for me at the time.
Yeah.
I thought he was just a great, family movie guy,
Yeah.
right? But he hit all the
Tracy D says Letterkenny has iconic quotes. 100% Letterkenny is an absolutely brilliant show, and says we're constantly quoting them in our house. Tracy, do you have a swear jar in your house? I don't know. I love that show. Tommy Temper, what's up? Tommy says, Jespo, you should do a story about the CBC dude that quit and is calling out the CBC for their left-wing bias. That's Travis Danraj you're talking about. I have chatted about it on the show, and I don't think Travis would mind me mentioning. We obviously did request an interview with him, and on the advice of his lawyer, Catherine Marshall, he's not doing interviews right now. I know that the National Post did a feature, but that is locked and loaded. Travis knows that he's got a wide open door here on Real Talk when he's prepared to talk about it. So of course we'd love to shout him out. I had some people, this is kind of interesting. A lot of people will talk about how we like platform people. You don't like certain perspectives. And we got some of that yesterday following our conversation with Eva Chipiuk. She was debanked by RBC. RBC told her to basically pack her shit. Her accounts are closed. And she came on to talk to us about that experience. We're always looking to bring on the newsmakers. If there's something that's happening, if we have a guest that's coming on to talk about something, but they're not part of the story, in many circumstances, not all, but that's not been our first choice, right? Like there's many circumstances where we reach out to the person involved, the person that's part of the story, but it's not an unusual circumstance. Producers will know this, of course. You get a note back. We'll reach out to somebody. We already know what they're going to say. We already know that they're not going to do the interview. Pierre Poilievre is a classic example. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we're being proactive, that they know that we want to talk to them, whether or not they decide to do this. Travis, obviously, there's a lot of legal issues at play, which is probably why he doesn't want to come on a show that basically says whatever it wants and streams on the internet, doesn't want to cost himself potentially employment, future circumstances, or what have you. But yes, we've reached out to him, and it's a fascinating thing what he's done. Basically resigning from a very high profile position.
Sure.
Right? The show that Ian Hannamansing's hosting right now.
But I mean,
and really leveling some pretty hefty accusations around the editorial and the morale reality at the CBC.
But I would ensure Travis that if he came on the show, like look at yesterday, we had the Minister of Education on here.
So
had
good.
a very fair conversation with
Laura
someone,
Winton.
basically a debate.
Yeah.
Where
It was a debate.
there was some talking over of each other, but respect on both sides, letting each other make their points. So I mean, anyone can come on the show and be treated fairly. We're not some off the cuff crazy, wild, hold us by the tail.
No.
And you're gonna get.
We can be. If that's what people are looking for, we can do it.
Well, we were talking about this the other day. Like we know, and people say, "Oh, bullshit," but we pretty much know how we could be millionaires tomorrow.
Yep.
Take for example the title of our show yesterday, or one of our highlights, basically says Eva Chipiuk.
Yeah.
A Freedom Convoy lawyer debanked by CBC.
By RBC. Yeah.
It's a very nice title. The title of our short. Alberta book ban debated.
Yeah.
But we could have just gone in and said, liberal owned by conservative minister.
Yeah, conservative piles on woke liberal.
That's not the way we frame our content.
We might have to start doing that. Ms. B says she loves Canadian bacon. Brilliant. I watched it like a month ago, went back and rewatched it. Oh, man. God bless John Candy. And we're getting a lot of votes for Shoresy as well, the Letterkenny spinoff.
It's really good.
It's so good as well. Ben says he goes, I haven't watched any late night shows for like over a decade. He says, is there any comedy left or is it all political satire? fair question. I enjoy Kimmel from time to time. Like I think his monologues are good. Enjoy the interviews, but there it is a lot. Like it's a lot of. I mean, I guess because Donald Trump is kind of the gift that keeps on giving. He's a gift to Fox News, right? He's a gift to Saturday Night Live. He's a gift to Kimmel and Fallon. But like it is, Ben kind of makes an interesting point. Like it feels like the first 10 minutes of any late show monologue is all Trump.
Sure.
It's all Trump all the time.
I think times have just changed since like Johnny Carson and whoever. Like you used to talk about Hollywood.
Yeah.
Hollywood was number one. Movie stars, comedians, actors, musicians. They would be, the parts of the insults or whatever in the monologue. Now, I mean, politics is so ingrained in everything we do every day, and the algorithm. Like these shows watch analytics. They know that like the monologue with Trump in it is going to do way better than talking about Sydney Sweeney. It's just the way it is.
Our
right?
YouTube short that has 2.5 million views. Guess who it's about? It's about Donald.
So I don't think it's necessarily that there's a political angle and they're trying to push a narrative. They just know what gets views, and views keep them on TV. And look at Colbert. Colbert just got sacked, and he had like out of late night, he was number 1 or number 2 all the time, and he still got sacked.
There's a lot of factors at play here, though, right? I mean, and you laid it out in a recent episode.
But
obviously,
Paramount's saying it's money.
The Paramount deal, and it does come down to money, and every once in a while that's the way it goes. Emily is 100% right in our live chat, powered by Park Power, says Stephen Colbert is going to be sifting through offers for like the next 6 months.
Dude.
Stephen Colbert could launch a podcast today.
I was going to say, if he goes on YouTube,
podcast.
he's a billionaire. Well, he's already a billionaire.
Well, but look at what Tucker Carlson's doing on
100%.
YouTube. Tucker Carlson doesn't need Fox News. Right?
Look
Fox News needs Tucker more than Tucker needs Fox.
100%.
Put it that way.
But look at what Letterman did with Netflix.
Or rather, he's on X. He's not on YouTube, is he?
But look at what Letterman did with his private show now, where he has just like the craziest guests, like Barack Obama. He has, Howard Stern. Like Stephen Colbert could start that show tomorrow, have millions of viewers. He's going to be fine.
Yeah, I'm just looking here right now. Tucker Carlson on YouTube. With his 4.3 million subscribers. Hey, guys, give us a follow. Will you subscribe to us on YouTube? We're closing in on 35,000. We'd love to get there this weekend. He's not posting, like, his posts are not, let's see. Yeah, he's got some recent ones. Yeah, he does. Tucker Carlson. So he is on there. Yeah, like about 500,000 views per episode. I think he gets more engagement on X. It's very interesting to see how these, I don't want to call him a content creator. I don't see myself, we're talk show hosts. But the sort of like traditional media, like cable news, people still, there's still people obviously that'll have Fox or CNN or MSNBC, like whatever it is, CBC. Maybe you have it on all day in the background. But more and more, like there's people, like you hear of a ton of people that are all out canceling everything. If you're paying for streaming services, I mean, if your family's paying for Netflix, Prime, Disney Plus, Apple TV, like Paramount, like whatever you're paying for, which is you. Well, there's already like $75, $80, right? At least. And then unless you're watching maybe for the live sports, which even then you could subscribe just to like sports packages. I think gone are the days of people needing like 180 channels. And I think talk show hosts and other content creators have realized that like it doesn't cost Tucker Carlson anything aside from staffing and a studio to be on YouTube. So the profit margin on however he's monetizing
it's insane.
Plus, I mean, everything else is like he's laughing. I mean, I know that they were paying him $15-20 million a year on Fox, but I guarantee he's making as much right now.
100%. And that goes back to what we were just talking about. That's why late night hosts are going to politics. They're trying to get ratings. They're trying to get views. They're trying to stay in the game, because look at the production. You were on a TV show. How many people they got to pay? Lighting techs, producers, like the staging, the lease on the place you're having the show out of. All that is gone. YouTube, you go into a closet and turn on a microphone.
Yeah, well, never mind the cost of like the tower infrastructure and come on, right? Scarlett says North of North is spectacular.
That's the one I mentioned. Yeah, it's like a North of 60 update. It's really good. Okay,
cool. I've also got some people like some of these shows. I'm like making notes right now on stuff that I need to watch and get up to speed on. TD says Son of a Critch is her current fave. Mark Critch, the star of that one, formerly of This Hour Has 22 Minutes, and he's done a ton of other stuff as well. I've not yet checked out Son of a Critch. I think that'll be interesting. It's like basically him, but it like rewinds the clock back to when he was young,
Sure.
right? Like it's kind of like, is that like a Wonder Years kind of a vibe?
Oh, I love the Wonder Years. Not Canadian, but what a great show.
What a great show.
You should watch Canadian. You know what you'd like? Canada's Ultimate Challenge, which is kind of like a giant Canadian obstacle course show. That's pretty cool. That's fun too. But like, you know, these all don't get noticed as much as American TV and the Netflix shows that you see that you get. Literally, there's a new show out you get from Apple and Netflix that comes into your email. So yeah, I'd be sad to see if the CBC went away and all these shows were just kind of gone. You know
it's
what
not
I mean?
going to go away.
I mean, a few of them would be on Crave for sure and things like that. But
yeah, I'm just okay, cool. I'm literally making notes. All of these. Tracy says, yeah, she says, "Son of a Critch" has a total Wonder Years vibe. It's fantastic. Oh, Winnie, hey, Winnie. Let's all just take a second to.
what would you do?
Sing a tune.
What you say, little boy?
Okay, we promise to stop singing. For a small monthly donation, we'll promise to never sing again. Justin says, Justin, thanks for your YouTube membership. We appreciate you. Says Stephen Colbert had a 200-person staff. I know he talked about that when he was
insane.
laid off. By the way, also, you know what's kind of fascinating? Colbert was informed, like that this is going to be like he was informed, like he's not fired. He was informed that his show's being canceled.
No, it's coming to an end. It's
that's
not
what I'm
being
saying.
Canceled. It's
well,
the
I mean, that's the
season's-
same thing.
But the season's going to end.
This is going to be the last season.
The way it should.
But he's not like done. Like in my life, when I was fired, I mean, it's different circumstances.
Yeah, he could have got
Steve,
another job with Paramount.
But like I didn't get a chance to. Well, I did on my first episode of Real Talk. What's up, everybody? But I didn't get a chance to say thank you to the audience. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye. I didn't, like you're fucking done. But like Colbert, it's wild because he's like canned, but he's not canned. Like he still gets to do a whole season.
months.
So it's been amazing because like his guests are ripping the network. He's making fun of the network. Like Letterman's ripping the network. Fallon, Kimmel, Seth Meyers,
Jon Stewart.
Everybody's ripping the network. And he's still got this platform to like basically rip the network that he's on for the whole. It's wild.
And that's what makes me think maybe all these, I'm not going to call them conspiracy theories, but you know, Trump silenced him. That's why, in this big deal with Paramount, well, maybe, but like if they wanted to, wouldn't they just cancel him right out the gate? Or wouldn't they wait until, a week before this May deadline? Like, God, he's got till next May to throw him off air. I'm not sure all these, he's being silenced by Trump and everything has any basis to it. I just think, hey, maybe they're smarter than we are, Ryan. Maybe they said, hey, let's tell him way ahead of time so he goes absolutely nuts on air and we get crazy ratings.
Yes.
Maybe that's the thing, too.
And then all of a sudden, guess what? Show's not canceled anymore. Right? Cancel the show. Get the deal done.
Actually, no, we're keeping you.
Get the FCC off your back.
Yeah.
Get the President of the United States off your back.
Make him the solidified #1 late show host because people are tuning in because he's saying wild things.
Yeah.
And then keep him on air.
I think that's a brilliant idea. I love that. Justin went on to say, Colbert's 200-person staff says, that, shows like Bleeding Money, it was not a sustainable model. Says he could make the same amount now with a staff a tenth of the size of the Late Show. I mean, 20 people on an independent streaming show, depending on your, how you're doing it.
It's a little bloated.
Maybe it's possible. Blast Sheep says, I can't watch Netflix anymore. They ruined every semi-woke show by making it 10 times more woke. Shows like Sex Education were amazing. I've never seen that. Says they were amazing. Says you had some sprinkled into in the later seasons. Auntie Danny says, isn't it interesting that Pierre Poilievre, who's running in Alberta, won't come on Alberta's most popular podcast, Real Talk? Says asking fair questions is not bias. That from Auntie Danny. You're not wrong. We'll invite him one more time before the by-election happens on the 18th of August. I'd love to chat with him. I don't have an axe to grind with Pierre. Like I don't know. I don't quite understand why he's refused to do it to this point. It's not that he won't do independent shows. He's done Jordan Peterson's podcast. We don't get the same downloads that Jordan Peterson gets, but that's not the point, right? If you want to run in Battle River Crowfoot, there's no podcast or talk show, and I can say this boldly and accurately, that has more downloads and streams from that riding than Real Talk. So why wouldn't you come do Real Talk, right? Fair. But like, if you're explaining you're losing, right? We don't, we'll tell people in our pitches, you guys should see our pitches. They're oftentimes cheeky, they're oftentimes fun, and they're oftentimes to the point. But we'll guarantee people a fair shake. We'll guarantee them the opportunity to say whatever they'd like to say, to push back on the host, to directly address the audience. And I think that that's something that would be a benefit to Canada's Conservative leader. And so, of course, that invitation remains open. This episode has been happening with the incredible support of our friend Cameron and his team at California Closets of Canada, proudly Canadian owned and operated, all of their installations manufactured right here in Alberta. We love what California Closets did for our entertainment center. This is where our family gathers and watches all these great Canadian shows. Johnny, this weekend, mark my words, I'm going to show the polka dot door to my young sons. And we're going to watch it on the flat panel TV that is seamlessly integrated into a beautiful California Closets installation that at 8 years old is still looking as good as the day it was installed. My wife, Carrie, and I invested in this California Closets installation because, in large part, it was guaranteed for life. So we have that confidence that while we've invested in our home, we also know that it'll stand the test of time and hopefully increase the value of the home should we ever decide to move. California Closets can custom design whatever you need to fit your space and to fit your budget. If you go to their website, californiaclosets.ca, you can learn more about 4 different levels of installation, starting with practical simplicity all the way up to luxury refined with those premium finishes, hardware, and construction. Luxury inserts, accented materials like leather, back-painted glass, exclusive eco-resins. They are on the cutting edge of design. Nobody does it better than California Closets. You can request your free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. Love this from Tommy. He says California Closets has great products.
Oh, man.
You can see them from a mile away. You walk into a place that has California Closets, you know it. That's for sure.
They are absolutely beautiful. Is Tommy's the one who said he doesn't watch the Netflix shows?
No, that was Blah Sheep. Blah Sheep. Yeah.
They do. I mean, just North America kind of leans left. If you're talking to the world as a whole, I would guess it leans conservative just because most countries, if you took them all, the majority of them are probably conservative, authoritarian. But you get over to North America where the movies and shows we love are made, I would guess the majority of North America leans left. If you took it all, maybe it's only, 53% or whatever, but that's just how things are made. But I would also note that like Netflix doesn't, I mean, they pay for production, but they're not directing and doing stuff like that. They hire people to do that stuff, right? They make deals with companies to make shows, right? So
I'm doing a quick search online. Take it for what it's worth, Real Talkers, on whether or not there's more left-leaning folks or right-leaning folks on planet Earth.
I think it would be conservative for sure.
Well, it says it's difficult to definitively say whether there are more left-wingers or right-wingers globally. And this is a good point, as political affiliation is complex and varies by region and individual. Surveys often show a tendency toward the center-right in Western countries like the United States. But other regions like Latin America typically have more left-leaning governments. A significant portion of the population may also not strongly identify with either the left or the right, music to my ears, or may not even understand those terms. It cites a study from Arden Strategies showing that center-right governments are more dominant in Europe and North America, while, like we said, in Latin America, center-left and left-wing governments more common. That's kind of interesting. I've never really heard somebody ask that question. I would imagine.
I would just think like across the pond, so to speak, like across from North America, if you took all the countries, the majority of them are probably right-leaning, right? Conservative. Some of them are like authoritarian. They're like, but if you come over to North America, I think even our version of right-leaning in those countries would probably be liberal to them, right? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like someone in the center in North America is probably a liberal in Iran or somewhere like that, right? So that's all I was saying. But I was saying where the majority of big production movies, Hollywood, stuff like that come from nowadays in North America, it's kind of like that's just how it is. It comes from a liberal kind of place.
Yeah.
But also like the more conservative or right-leaning stuff would seem pretty liberal to someone, in one of those countries that is, pretty hardcore right-leaning across the pond.
Across the pond.
That's what they say.
Yeah. Okay.
But I don't think there's any for some things maybe, but I don't think there's any conspiracy theory to like indoctrinate people with left-leaning policies. I think people just make art that they love and their opinion gets woven into it by the directors and the writers because it's just their perspective, right? I don't think Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you also, like, you know, just to state the obvious, like if somebody says like, oh, the show's so woke, we watched a movie. Gosh, what was it called? Great story, Jespo. I don't know what the movie was called.
Happy Gilmore 2.
Thank you, John. Have I told you my review of Happy Gilmore 2? No, but it's this movie where it's like this, it's an animated film. It's like made within the last 5 years. And it's this guy that's tasked, and they live in this society that's fueled by these berries that grow on this plant that have energy in them. And
what is this?
So his father was like this great mountain explorer. Somebody I'm going to describe it, and someone in the chat, you're going to get 5 points. Someone in the chat is going to tell me what movie this is. This guy's father, years before, they lived in a society that was surrounded by these big, huge mountain peaks, and they could never get over the peak. And his father was like on this expedition to like get over the mountain peak.
Okay.
It's like a children's movie, but it's great for adults too. And his father like disappears. And then like 30 years later, their energy secure. I mean, it's all about oil and gas. It's all about solar. It's all about like, it's very,
but it's like a metaphor.
It's all sort of metaphorical.
Okay.
But then the guy, you know, the son has to go on this journey to like find out why all these berries, like why all these fruits on these plants are dying. Because once the plants die, then they've lost their energy source, and then the planet's gonna die. And there's all these levels. I won't spoil the end, but like there's all these layers of kind of like, you know, yeah. I mean, they're
you
like,
saw through.
You're like, oh, this is obviously what this is about.
Yeah.
This is obviously what this is about. And so I was talking with somebody about it over the weekend, and they used the same word. They were like, oh, the movie's a little bit woke. And I was like, what do you mean? And they go, well, what do you think I mean? They're like right out of the gates, like, you know, the parents are like an interracial couple, and then like the son is gay. And I'm like, I don't know if that's woke. I think that's just like life.
World.
That's called like life, right? That's not woke. Like, this isn't like the first time in history.
Being a black person is woke.
Do you know what I mean?
Like, it just makes no sense.
Like, it makes no sense at all. So that's not woke to like portray society. Like you talk to Bean Gill, we just referenced her, the star of Push, like to have representation of, you know, people with disabilities or people in chairs or like what have you. It's not woke. That's like just real life. That's people living their real lives. So let me know. Nobody cashing in on the 5-point offer to let me know what movie it was. I'll tell you what, I'm going to punch this in our Real Talk community chat. I'm going to punch it in Discord. I'm going to punch it in Discord.
Where all the no holds barred section
for
of the
our
show.
Real Talk patrons, our YouTube channel members, the Real Deal and the Real VIP channel members. And that's where that conversation will continue after each and every show. As we wrap this one, this has been so much fun. We knew this episode was going to be great. It's a little bit different. There's not a ton of political fighting. We're not mudslinging at anybody. A shout out again to Shauna Feth for joining us after moderating that debate last night. Craig Baird, what a beauty. Thanks to him. Safe journeys on your road trips, Real Talkers. Coming up on our next episode, Kristen Rayworth gives us her firsthand take as a survivor on that Hockey Canada verdict. It's an episode you won't want to miss. We'll talk to you then.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjasperson.com.